You are listening to the Billy Dees Podcast.
All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the program. As always, I am absolutely thrilled that you are here. If you've never checked us out before, we are primarily an interview and a commentary-based podcast. Today, we have an interview for you, but I would call it more like a co-host. Sara is on the line. Sara is a very frequent co-host to the show. Sara Alessandrini is here. So glad you are here, Sara. Welcome.
Thank you, Billy. It's funny because every time we were talking about New York while I was living in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Now I'm moving closer to New York and we're talking about Los Angeles. So it's perfect.
Yes. Sara is from Italy, but don't let that fool you. She's been in the country a long time, and she's lived in Los Angeles over 10 years.
11 years.
11 years, yes. And she's done a lot of work out there. She's really on the ground, and we're going to talk about that. As a matter of fact, I talked to a friend of mine who used to live in Los Angeles, and she was telling me some stories. So I have a feeling they're really going to line up with what you're saying. She's saying it's not the Los Angeles that it was 20 years ago. So let's to let the audience know, primarily what we're going to talk about is the Los Angeles mayor race, which, just like everything else, just like every other election in the United States now, especially the major ones, has become a circus. It's become an absolute circus. We're going to talk about that a little bit. But as a backdrop to this, Sara has worked very hard. I've talked to Sara many times. Very talented filmmaker. She's got a lot of experience in business, and she's got a real good perspective on what's going on in Los Angeles. And I know it's fun to just badmouth California. You know, everywhere else, it always talks about how bad things are in California, but there are some legitimate bad things happening there. I think it's a great state. I think it's a beautiful state. It's the largest economy in the United States, and there's a lot of good things about California. But for some reason, the last couple of years, I would say it's lost its way. So let's start with you, Sara. You came to Los Angeles about 11 years ago. And what attracted you to Los Angeles?
Well, to me, my heart was always in New York. So It was either New York or Los Angeles because I was interested in the film industry. So It was either one of those. And then I just found the cheaper way actually to go to Los Angeles compared to New York. So it's funny because, people, depending on what you're looking at, some things are more expensive in Los Angeles compared to New York, but other things are more expensive in New York compared to Los Angeles. So it really depends. You can still figure out to live a life in a not super expensive way. So there are still ways. So I think nowadays everybody's still talking about affordability. But I feel like that became a buzzword nowadays in politics. Everything is about affordability, but I don't think this mayoral race in Los Angeles is really about affordability. That's not the main problem people are facing over there. And that we can talk about also how the different people approach that.
Yes. When you got there, were you impressed? Wow, this is America. This is, sunny blue skies, or what was your impression?
Well, I can tell you exactly the first sentence I said when I entered Los Angeles. And I said, what the hell is this? This is the first thing I said, because I came to this country a few years before just to see how I would like it. Because I was always in love with this country, but I'd never been here. So I first visited my friend that was living in Boston. So I was for a month, and I've seen the Boston area. I've seen New York. So that was what I've seen in first of America. Then I came to Los Angeles, but I never visited. So I came straight to study, and I arrived around midnight, and I got a hostel in Hollywood because obviously I wanted to see Hollywood. So I went there, and as soon as I walk on Hollywood Boulevard, I was like, what the hell is this?
Yes.
This is really not what it's supposed to be.
No, the whole thing, pictures of Hollywood are a lot like a sound stage. It's a studio representation of what's going on out there, and that's a whole other thing. The film industry is in turmoil right now. Maybe that's a strong word, but it's going through some big changes, which is a whole nother topic. Okay, while you're there, this is my opinion. You tell me if I'm right or wrong. For a long time, California, going way back when I was a small child and before me and before you ever came to this country, California was actually very conservative. Ronald Reagan, who's like the patron saint of conservative politics, although by his standards, he wouldn't be conservative enough today. He's not crazy enough today. But Ronald Reagan would probably be considered a moderate today, maybe left, right of center. But for a long time, he was the staple of conservatism. He was a very popular governor out there. And even the Hollywood machine, for the most part, presented a lot of conservative ideals for many, many years. Now, this was like through the 70s. And then the switch got flipped. It became very much a leftist state. It became very much a left-leaning, the film industry and so forth, the media out there. And more recently, the last 10 years, and you and I have talked about this, it's not just a matter of being progressive. It's not just a matter of being left, but these radical ideas where nothing is too crazy. Nobody ever says on the left or on the Democratic Party, no, this is too much. There's never a line that can't be crossed. And I think the combination of that, the lockdown, the way that community talked down to the rest of the country during that time, it just spelled disaster. There was like a perfect storm of stuff. And then you have these major businesses leaving California. You had the fires, which were badly managed a few years ago. So now it's a mess. And it's as far left now as you can possibly get. Is that a good representation of what's happened over the years with Los Angeles?
Yeah, it's a little different, Los Angeles, because there is everybody's very much left in Los Angeles. Yeah. But I think like if I compare to the New York mentality, the people that are in New York, I have this theory that they say people move to Los Angeles because they want to hide from society, and people move to New York because they want attention. So yes. That's my idea of the type of people, because Los Angeles is very isolating. So it's a very different way how the left is over there. So, so it is very much to the left, but in a little different way. I think, there is a lot of virtual signaling, obviously. Yeah. There is a lot of that. But there are a lot of people that are also like, they just want to do their job and go home and live their lives. Obviously, I think like the more average people are not necessarily as much left as they would be in New York. I would say that.
I would say across the country, the vast majority of people, regardless of how they vote, are basically like that. They don't get up in the morning and think about some political agenda. They just want to go to work, get their bills paid, come home, take a dump, flush the toilet, watch TV. That's pretty much the extent of their life. They don't want to get bothered in everybody's business. But the overriding directions that these areas seem to go in has fluctuated a great deal. When you're out in public and somebody mentions Gavin Newsom, and you're, here again, just at a local cafe. My understanding is, despite all the controversies, he's still popular out there. Is that correct?
I think so. Yeah, I don't think he's like seen in a very bad way. I wouldn't say that. But at the same time, we're looking at like, depending on the person, if you're looking at like people that are on the right spectrum, obviously that's very bad. If you're looking from the DSA perspective, so the socialist, he's too much moderate, obviously. So he would not be a good, right, politician for them. He's trying to be more the moderate, but the problem, like I have, like with Gavin Newsom, like he posts something, he says something that is very much like far left. So like, there was an example when he was supporting transgender in female sports, right? Mm-hmm. But then I think it was when he had this interview on the podcast, I think it was with Charlie Kirk. Then he said, okay, that's not fair. So then why do you post about that? And then as soon as someone who is more moderate on the other side, you change version. So who are you? What do you believe if every time you change that? And I think he's more moderate. But again, I think that's the problem with the Democratic Party. They're trying to appeal to that far left group.
Yeah.
And it's going to be interesting in this election, actually, because we have both. So we have three people in this race. There is Karen Bass, who is the current mayor, and she's more the typical Democrat.
Sure.
Right? Then there is Spencer Pratt, who is more the Republican. And then we have Nithya Raman, and she's the DSA candidate. They haven't endorsed her, I think, directly, but she's a DSA member. So we definitely have this, we can see if you're like a socialist, obviously Nithya Raman would be your candidate here. They would not go for Karen Bass, who also wants more police. They would certainly not go for Spencer Pratt. And then you have the regular Democrats, who that's going to be interesting because there are some regular, like typical liberal, old school Democrats that they might not want to vote for Karen Bass because of the management of the fire. But then they would have to pick between Spencer Pratt, who is technically, they call him a MAGA candidate. I don't think he's that much MAGA anyway. Or the person that is the DSA. So that's going to be interesting because obviously there are still a lot of people with the Trump derangement syndrome that everything is about Trump. So those people will never consider Spencer Pratt just because of that, because they think that the worst thing that this country will ever face is Donald Trump. I actually had an interesting conversation with a friend of mine. He's like in his 70s, I think. But yeah, he doesn't even see how the DSA is actually taking much hold in politics. So he's saying Trump is the worst thing ever. And the far left is not as bad compared to that.
Yeah.
But the far left is taking a lot of positions. So that's also the question. A lot of people are saying, why are you running to Nithya Raman? Because she first endorsed Karen Bass and then decided to run herself. But that's also, I think, the DSA, they are trying to take this big position around the country. But Los Angeles is also very different from New York, because I don't know if like a lot of people know exactly how it works in Los Angeles, because there is Los Angeles City, which is like a smaller part, and then there is Los Angeles County.
Right.
And within Los Angeles County, you have Los Angeles City, which is what they're running for. But for example, I think Beverly Hills has its own mayor, Culver City has its own mayor. So there are all other areas that are part of the county, even central parts of the city, but they're not technically the city. So it works a little different. And there are other areas, for example, for the fires, she's technically responsible for the Palisades fire, but she was not responsible for the Altadena fire because that's not part of the LA city. So sometimes people complain, like blame her, but there are so many people that should be blamed in those situations anyway, because how the city is structured.
Yes. Yeah, that's a complex thing. I know that there's, a tendency to want to point the finger of blame at somebody politically, and sometimes it does go in that direction, but it goes other places too. And there's a lot of nuance to that. Let's talk. I kind of want to do two things. I want to just cover some of the major players in this and your impression of them, and I want to move to what's happening on the ground there in Los Angeles. And I know you have some firsthand experiences about that. Karen Bass. Now, she typically, incumbents for mayoral candidates usually have a big advantage in the United States, especially in big cities. But that's not the case this year. You know, there's a lot of people. Actually, 13 people. I don't have the whole list of names, but 13 people are challenging the mayor this year. Okay, and this is going to be the June 2nd primary. And we're in production today of a Memorial Day weekend. So this is going to be out the week preceding. So there's a lot happening with this race. And I bet if you're out there, you know, it's all over. I presume it's all over the local TVs. All the ads are running all the time. Is that true?
Well, I'm not in Los Angeles now.
Yeah, but when you were there.
Well, it's very interesting because when you follow New York, everything happens in the news. Every little political thing happens there. In Los Angeles, you just don't know about it.
Interesting.
Even last time when there was Newsom was running again for mayor, even not for governor, I didn't even realize that because no one was talking about it.
Interesting.
At all.
Yes.
And I'm into politics, so I follow everything.
Well, California is one of those states. You got everything there. You got snow there in the mountains. You got desert. You have beach. There's agriculture there. There's business there. It's a huge state, and there's just a lot to do there. And there's a whole host of politics, all the different cities. What's going on in San Francisco is completely different than what's going on in San Diego or whatever. So I can understand that to a point. But I'm guessing that, Los Angeles right now, a week out and some odd days, a lot of people are trying to make up their mind. And the other guy I want to ask you about is Spencer Pratt. Because quite frankly, I didn't know who this guy was. Talk about not knowing who he was. I had no idea about the reality star and all that. I had no idea. I wouldn't discount somebody, he's that reality star. I wouldn't do that. Because just because you were a reality TV star don't mean you don't have ability or you don't have credentials. A good example of that was Ronald Reagan. I mean, the left, when he started running, said, he's just an actor. Just an actor was the term they used. And that wasn't true at all. He had been involved in politics for decades. He was governor of California. He had a lot of on his resume going into the presidential election. He did. And just because somebody was an actor, you can't just dismiss them by saying they were just an actor when they have done other things. So let's talk about Spencer Pratt. I don't know much about this guy's background. How does he size up as a mayoral candidate?
I think I'm very excited actually about him, and he's not my cup of tea. He's not my type of politician either. And anyone who wants to make a change should have the opportunity. I'm the same way. I don't think just because someone is a reality star or what it is, it means necessarily he's not competent. Now, I'm all on the side of experience. Obviously, we talk about New York politics. I prefer experience, but at the same time, I prefer experience for people that have also policies that make sense. Not like Zoran Mamdani, that to me, it's not his experience. The biggest problem is also his policies. So Spencer Pratt is very interesting because I don't like he does call people names, call Karen Basura. I don't like that kind of politics. I don't like that campaigning. But he's actually very interesting because I think he understands Los Angeles and Los Angeles problems much more than the other candidates. So the other candidates are just more of the same, that they believe that you help homeless by leaving them on the street doing drugs. And that's obviously, it's been a problem, the homeless situation, for so many years. So he's someone who is willing to actually do something about it. And obviously, he's very, he wants to improve the situation for the fires because he lost the house during the fires. So obviously, he's very into wanting to make that kind of change. But I'm hearing him talking about other stuff that even other people have not really acknowledged. So I've worked throughout my time in Los Angeles in historic buildings, historic landmarks. And Los Angeles has a huge history and a lot of buildings that are Art Deco and a lot of historic businesses, properties, but everything is getting disappears in Los Angeles. So there's no one that really cares in government about the preservation of those. There are obviously organizations that do preservation, but there are a lot of historic movie theaters that have been letting die. And that's the history of Los Angeles. That's what made Los Angeles a great city. So there is no vibrancy anymore in Los Angeles. And so he's talking about also stop building these buildings that are all look the same. There is no style. There is no architecture. They're just random buildings, and build more Art Deco buildings. So bring also back the character of Los Angeles.
Yeah. I could make a broad statement about the country in general. I recently drove from Ohio to Florida, and that's a drive. That's over 1,000 miles. And when I'm going through the different states, I mean, the landscape changes. You go from flat to hilly, and then mountains, and all this other kind of stuff. But the signs are all the same. Next stop, Wendy's, Subway.
Yeah.
And the all the billboards for all the ambulance chasing attorneys. It's the same slogans, but the names change. It's like the same advertising agency does them all. And I think the culture, the history of the country as a whole, when I traveled when I was younger, when I traveled with my parents when I was, I don't know, 10 years old, 15 years old. When we went to a southern state, the culture was completely different. There was the southern cooking. There was the, what they called at the time, the southern hospitality. And yeah, this was a touristy thing. But at the same time, it was real. You could go through these small towns, and like you said, the architecture was different. The style of things was different. Every corner didn't have a McDonald's. And I don't know. I wonder if that's something that's disappearing across the country, and that's kind of sad. And I don't know that Americans have that feel anymore. So I mean, that's just my opinion, but I don't doubt that that's happening in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I mean, that's to me is sad. And Los Angeles, also compared to other places, like, people are not on the street. And that's what really bothered me about Los Angeles, is that it's not a city, because there is no real community. Like, Hollywood is the most walkable part of Los Angeles. And there is no reason for anyone to walk there, because most of the Hollywood part is all touristic stores selling T-shirts. Why do we need so many stores that are for tourists? And they're all like bad stores, not even like good stuff. There is nothing there for local people. And if you walk there are like homeless. There is smell of pee everywhere. So I would love to see a Los Angeles where people actually have a reason to go on the street, to walk, and not just be in the car or in the office or in their house. That's where everybody's just so isolated, because everywhere you go, it's sometime when and it's a little better now, I think, than it was a couple of years ago, probably. But so many times, like, you have to walk through encampments of homeless, depending where you're going. Yeah. And there are some areas, like obviously in downtown, that are full of like homeless encampments. You don't want to go there because it's such a like long area where there are homeless encampments. If you walk there, if someone pushes you there against the tent, like it's very unsafe. Yeah. And so in part of the city got a little better, I have to say that. But at the same time, it just feels like that these politicians don't really want to make a change. And the budget for fixing homelessness has been increasing every year. So it's not that there are no money. It's not that there, but also, it's, I think it feels like the politicians are making a business with homelessness, and they're not really doing things to make a change. Yeah. And again, there are different perspectives of what helps homeless. Some people really think that, okay, you just let them sleep on the street doing drugs. Apparently, there are programs where government give needles for free to homeless so that they don't get, disease when they do drugs. But now the government is actually encouraging homeless people to do drugs. So that's not how you help people. And so Spencer Pratt is the only one who actually seems to be willing to actually make a change and try different things and force people into treatment, because even if, like, there are all types of homeless people. Obviously, some people might be just because of they lost the job, but that's a smaller percentage. Sure. A lot of people are doing drugs, and people like using mental health as a word for everything. But if you're doing drugs, it's not the same thing as someone who has some mental issues, and the thing can overlap. But it's not the same thing. You have to do drug treatment for some people. Yeah. So Spencer Pratt seems the only one who actually want to take that approach and make a change, while the other people are just going for whatever's been done so far, which hasn't helped anything. Yeah.
Let me just speak about the homeless from my perspective. I can tell you that if you listen to liberals, it's because it's the rich capitalists that are driving up the rent, and people can't afford the rent. And if you listen to people on the right, it's those people just don't want to work. They want everything for free. And those are only two very small components. I think mental health is an issue. As you mentioned, drug use often overlaps mental health. And it's for a host of reasons. A lot of times people who are, having mental issues are vulnerable. So it's real easy to become a target for what were called pushers back in the day, to get them addicted. They're not capable of making good choices. And a lot of times people are, that have mental issues are trying to self-medicate. And this is especially true of depression and things like that. And that's how the average person, quite frankly, can become innocently addicted, was when they start, we've all come home from work after a bad day and say, I need a cigarette, I need a glass of wine or whatever. I mean, a lot of times it passes without consequence, but there are times when it escalates, and it doesn't happen in one day. It happens over a period of months or a year, where all of a sudden those needs just happen more and more often. The next thing you know, you're in a bad situation. But what I've noticed in Ohio, I've spent some time at some of the shelters. I've spent some time at some of the food areas. And I think what's a bigger issue, and a lot of people really don't get, is that these people are maybe a mix of everything I just said, but there's also a segment of the population that just simply, quite frankly, don't have the intellectual capacity to function in a modern society. They can't manage their prescriptions. They can't manage their appointments. If they do have any government benefits, they're not managing them well, or quite frankly, they're being taken advantage of, and the stuff is by their family or whoever. The stuff gets taken away from them. And really, shouting at these people, get a job, is really, they don't even understand what you're saying, quite frankly. And a lot of times I've heard people shout that. And giving them a house, giving them an apartment, it's only part of the problem, because they can't manage their daily lives. They almost need adult daycare. They need comprehensive care, and that is expensive. And it's not just a matter of throwing money at the problem. You need people power, people's time. You need staff to manage this population. And I don't know that that's being directly confronted by a lot of politicians. That kind of an answer is not something I hear too often, but here again, on the ground, I've been around them by the hundreds, and I've walked past them, and I'm not being mean, but honestly, you can tell by interacting with them and talking to them, they're at the capacity of a second grade. And it's so sad, because these people, I don't think necessarily want to be homeless or whatever. They're not bad people. They're not all criminals. A lot of them are victims of other people that are homeless. We've had a few, quite frankly, where people just take shots at them for fun in certain parts of the city. I mean, literally take shots at them. And I don't know that there is an easy solution. It's going to involve money for sure, but it's also going to involve people that are trained to handle and manage this population. And until somebody finds a way for that to become profitable, I don't know that there's going to be an easy solution. Is that what you think? Am I fair in that assessment?
Yeah, I think you need to have a different solution for every person. Obviously, it takes time, takes money. It's not simple. I think it should not be also a Los Angeles only problem dealt by the Los Angeles mayor, because a lot of people that come to Los Angeles come from other parts of the country too. And they come to Los Angeles because it's a warmer weather.
Yes.
So definitely there is, it needs to be interconnected. I kind of like what Spencer Pratt said, that he wants to put them in nature. Mm-hmm. Because I think that's also part of, again, from an international perspective, I think the mental health problem here in this country gets worse, especially because how society is built in a way compared to Europe, where even if you have mental issues like depression or something like that, like you still are part of a family. You're still always close to a lot of people.
Yes.
While a lot of people here end up isolating because maybe your family tells you you're 18 years old, you should leave. And so now you're living by yourself in a city where you don't have friends or family. And it's hard to make friends in a city like Los Angeles, where even though they claim to be socialist and they hate capitalism, people are very much focused into their own lives, into their own careers in Los Angeles.
Yes.
So it's a very isolating city. So if you have some mental issues, depression or other, whatever it is, if you're in an environment where you don't have any emotional support, that's going to become much worse. And I think that's geographically part of the geography of this country because it's much bigger compared to Europe and Italy, obviously. But at the same time, it's also how you build cities. Because again, you see the pictures of all other cities back in the 80s and 90s, and people were on the street all the time. They were walking. So you would surround yourself with different people and it would be much more social. While nowadays, people are really in their cars, in the office, and in their apartment.
Yeah.
So I think it's all these issues, like all this doesn't help.
Yeah, I've been a witness to, here again, I don't want to make what I'm about to say the subject of our podcast, but we in the United States have a tendency to abandon family members, especially older ones, when it comes time to take, when it becomes a job to take care of mom or dad. Families don't. Whatever the government provides for them is going to be fine, and they stay out of it. Brothers and sisters do not help each other. One of them starts to go astray and, well, I don't know what Tom's doing, but I got my own kids to take care of it, and this and that and the other thing. And I think that really speaks to a lot of what's happening on the streets. We have a culture now that really doesn't take care of the family unit, and the caring in the families just isn't what it used to be. And we can't ignore that. I mean, that's part of the problem here. That's my opinion. But anyway, moving on. I talked to a woman who is an executive for a company that you would recognize. She's recently retired. Now, obviously, she's older than you. And she said, she spoke about Los Angeles very fondly, about walking through some of those areas. And she went back to visit a couple of years ago, and she was afraid to get out of the car. And this speaks to crime. And here again, this is a different component. I can sound a little liberal when I'm talking about homelessness and compassion. I can sound a little progressive, but when it comes to hurting people, okay, that's where I don't have very much patience. If you're going to take $50 out of my wallet while I'm changing my clothes in the gym, I'm not particularly happy about it, but whatever. When you steal $50 and while you're in the process of doing that, you stab a pregnant woman. Okay, now I've lost my sympathy or my empathy for your situation at that point. And the one thing I have noticed about the left coast, as we often call it, is Democratic politicians cannot say violent crime is bad. They can't say it. I find that wasn't the case 25 years ago. Everybody, Republican, Democrat, they all agreed we can't have criminals running in the streets. Now there's always an excuse. And I don't, am I wrong in that? Is that?
Yeah. I have the same issue with the Democrats because they always support the wrong people.
Yes.
Like there are so many people in society that are contributing, and we can talk about in general people. We could talk about immigration. It's the same thing. There are people that contribute, that try to just do everything right. And then you have like this group, not all the Democrats, obviously, but this very far left group of people that actually prefer to support criminals rather than the good people. Like I'm so mad when during the State of the Union Trump speech, the Democrats didn't stand up when Irina, they were clapping for Irina and Irina's mother was there, the person that was killed by the black guy. Like that's not acceptable. Like this person lost her daughter and you're trying to make a political point. for all this. So I'm like, yeah, I have no patience for that. And even in New York, recently there was someone who killed a person, and this person was already charged for another crime, but the witness, the person who was the victim of that crime, decided not to say her story because she didn't want another, I think, black person to go to jail because she felt bad for him. And he was the one doing the crime. And then he went and killed another person after that. Mm-hmm. So this could be avoided. This person would not be dead if it wasn't that these people are feeling this compassion for criminals.
Yes.
And I understand the empathy. Of course, if you're a criminal, every person is a victim in society. There is no human being who wasn't a victim of something. Doesn't matter if you're white, whatever country you're from. We all have emotional issues. We all had something in our past. So I understand that. But at the same time, you should not be on the side of criminals and let other criminals create more victims and more people mad. So yes, I'm very hard on that too.
I'm all for understanding someone's situation before they stab someone, before they shoot someone, anybody can find themselves in unfortunate circumstances in destitute situations. Absolutely. And I think what the left has done is they've hijacked that empathy. They've hijacked that sympathy, and they've hijacked a lot of that. They've also imposed a lot of guilt on people, saying because of, other people's successes, other people have suffered. And they've created this situation now where, the insurance executive that was shot. Yeah, he's
Brian Thompson.
Yes, it's Luigi Mangini, I believe.
Mangione.
Yeah. Mangione. Okay, I mispronounced. Thank you for correcting me. He's got groupies, and that's not unusual. Charles Manson had them.
Yeah.
So, but now it's an economic thing. It's a political thing. I think with Charles Manson, and there was Richard Ramirez, who was the Night Stalker. They had fan groups too, but it was more because there was an erotic thing about these dangerous men. It was one of those things. Now it's a political thing. These people have become political heroes. Their actions have become justified because of an unfair society. And I think that's going to give rise to more violence, in my opinion. Am I wrong about that?
Yeah. And I'm glad that these people that were talking about Brian Thompson, that his kids are better off with him dead. That's a terrible thing to say. But they also had press passes. The city gave them press passes to these people who knows for what reason. So I'm glad even like people like Mamdani said they should not have gotten these passes and this is not okay. So yes, there are still too much normalization about this. And this feeling that there are I know a lot of very nice people who also are happy that he was killed. Yes. And that's horrible. And so, but in the past, you would think, okay, these are like people on the fringe, but there are so many very nice people who feel that way. And that's horrible.
Yeah. They'll say, well, it's not something I can condone, wink and smile, but, that type of thing. And I think, when you talk about the levity of these assassination attempts, and here again, I don't care if it's Trump, if it's Obama, or who it is. I don't understand why it's so hard to say that this is wrong. It's beyond me. Getting back to my friend saying that it was dangerous she was afraid to get out of the car. I don't think people have an understanding of how bad things are on the street in Los Angeles, that there's actually like poop scoopers that you usually think about.
I feel like I am one of them. That's how I would call myself.
That you usually think about in terms of a dog. But this is something that you have to skirt the excrement as you're walking down the sidewalk. How did one of the premier cities in the world get that bad?
Yeah, so I was working as a facility manager of the Egyptian Theater, as I was telling you before, and it's right on Hollywood Boulevard. And I was working for this company that was a nonprofit managing it. So there was no money for security cameras. There was no money for security guards. And it's right there on Hollywood Boulevard. So And I was a facility manager, and I would go to work every day, like at 9 a.m. And the first of my coworkers would arrive at 11 a.m., like people coming late. And I would be by myself opening the theater. And very often in the parking lot on the side, there were like homeless sleeping there. And then over the night they pooped. So then it was on me to clean their poop all the time. Like there is this crazy story. And this is like during the night, you would think, okay, that's normal. One time we were doing a lot of premieres, red carpets, because we used to work with a lot of like big studios. So they would do their premiere at our theater. So one time we're preparing for like a premiere. This was like a smaller event. It was 4 p.m. We have a big courtyard, and this woman comes inside the courtyard, goes against our historic wall, and she lowers her pants and she poops there in front of us. And we're all looking at this person. It's like, you cannot do that. Like,
yeah.
It's funny because you learn so much. I was like, so just the time for me to go inside the theater, because I would use some popcorn boxes to scoop that, gloves. Just the time for me to go and grab that. There were so many flies already on the poop. And you're like, how can it be so fast for flies to find the poop? It was like crazy. This is like the type of situation we had to deal with.
Yes.
Another time, overnight, we had an alley where we would use as a parking space, and there was only one chain. We didn't have a gate there, and installing a gate, it cost thousands of dollars.
Sure.
And we had to do that after. But overnight, there was this person who built his encampment in our alley. You would not believe how much stuff he was able to bring there in a few hours overnight. And he was a very nice guy. He said he was bipolar, so we called the Hollywood security, which luckily in Hollywood over the past years, they built their own security. They're walking around, so you know who to call. But this person really built like this encampment. We were like 5 people getting rid of his stuff. It took us like hours. He had more stuff than I probably had in my apartment. It's crazy that overnight was able to build that. And we had to call someone because obviously this person built this encampment, and you don't even know what's inside. But then they told us they could deal with the person, told him to leave. But because it was on a private property, because it was our alley, they couldn't do anything about the encampment. So we had to do that by ourselves and start cleaning all this. So looked like we were in a war zone, because of course, like there is smell of pee, there is weed, everything. So we had to get rid of this.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, there's obviously the discomfort, the grotesqueness of the task at hand, but there's also a legitimate health risk. I mean, that's a biohazard.
Yeah. I mean, you never know what is in there. There might be needles while you're trying to pull out something, like you just don't know. So we were like using like cooking supplies to try to grab stuff, put it in the trash cans, like covering. This was before even we were using masks, because it was before COVID. So, but yeah, the smell, and we had to deal on our own because the system is not. Like if it's on the street, yes, the city can take care of that. But even there, very often they don't even do that. So very often there is no one, but there is a bunch of trash on the street that you still have to walk around. And in Hollywood, we were lucky because, again, they built this group. Hollywood is taking care, having like these people patrolling. So if you have an issue with someone aggressive, you can call them. But the problem is that the LAPD is a big problem because they don't answer. So then after these 7 years, I was working for another company. This was like in the Los Feliz area. So it's not too far from Hollywood, but it's actually under the district of Nithya Raman.
Okay.
So it's her district. And she actually went to the place I was working there, but I didn't see her. But over there, different times we had issues and we had to call the police. One time was at 11 a.m., and there was this person who was very aggressive, tried to enter the property. And this was another historic facility. And this person was trying to enter. So we barricaded inside and we called the police. I don't think they ever came because they just, that's one of the big problems in Los Angeles. There is a very small amount of policemen. It's under 9,000. While in New York, for example, NYPD is 35,000. And the Los Angeles city area is a little bigger than the New York 5 boroughs. So like no one has as many police as New York City. But that's the difference. 35,000 policemen compared to 9,000 is a big difference. Other times we had someone who stole $2,000 at the place we were working, and we called the police at 9 a.m. I think they showed up at 1 or 2 a.m. So, 9 p.m. And they showed up at 1 or 2 a.m. So how can you do business like that? In New York, Mamdani was complaining that the New York NYPD would show up in 16 minutes at the bodega if they had an issue. Like in Los Angeles, it could be 3 or 4 hours if they show up.
Yeah.
So that needs to be changed. And again, a lot of people in Los Angeles are those who defund the police.
Yeah.
But in Los Angeles, it's a big issue. We need more police because they they cannot show up, I guess.
Yeah. I don't understand the left. They create, I don't want to say they alone, but they certainly create a situation where these quagmires can exist. And then they turn around and blame other people when it happens. And here again, I'm not necessarily a pro-right person either, but on this issue, when it comes to what's happening with crime in the cities right now, I'm going to say I'm going to criticize the Democrats a lot more than I'm going to criticize the Republicans. I think the Republicans are guilty of self-aggrandizement and things like that, just as much as any politician is. But I think the left right now, there's no crazy cause. There's no crazy lifestyle. There's no crazy anything off the charts where they say, all right, wait a minute, that's too much. Anything goes because that's their base. And it's causing great harm to what's happening in our great cities. For you now, you're transitioning into New York. You're leaving
slowly but surely.
Yes, and that's good. You know, it takes work, but I have no doubt you're very capable. As you're transitioning from Los Angeles to New York has certainly got some issues as well. I mean, we could get into the pro-socialist movement that as some of the polling people under 30, under 35 really think socialism is great. And that's reflected in the election that happened in Los Angeles with Mamdani.
New York.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. New York. Yeah, I'm getting my coasts mixed up. What are your hopes as you move into New York?
Have no idea because I don't even know why I'm doing this. It's just I'm not the type of person who lives because of issues.
Yes.
So like people are like, I'm leaving Los Angeles because it's too expensive or this or that. I'm not the type of person that lives something because of reasons. I'm just looking for something. So I feel like community-wise, I think New York is more the place where you can actually have more human relationship with people around you. And Los Angeles is very isolating. So I feel that's why I'm going more to New York. But you know how much I hate the DSA, the socialist, the Zoran Mamdani politics. So I don't know what's my expectation right now.
Yes. I have no doubt you're going. Do you have any big projects planned? Like let's mention your documentary. That is what New Yorkers say. Available on Apple TV and Tubi.
Tubi, yeah.
Yeah, and this follows Andrew Cuomo and how he was treated as a media darling at first when the accusations started, how the media ran with that, and how they really didn't follow through on a lot of what happened as those investigations went on. It's a 5-part series. There's one setup, and then there's 4 that are interview style. Okay.
Yes.
Do you have any other projects coming up, or do you have any ideas about some new stuff you want to share?
Well, not right now. I'm still going out and talking to people about the documentary. But right now, the past 2 months has been pretty crazy because, I've been doing this move. And yes, so I'm still figuring out. So okay. I'm still promoting the documentary as it is.
As it is. Okay. And where can people find you online?
They can go to my website. This is what New Yorkers say, where they can learn.com, where they can learn more about me, the docuseries, and there are links to my social media. So yeah, they can go like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram.
All right. Well, we're going to be checking things out with the LA mayoral candidacy race. The primary is June 2nd. And of course, Karen Bass is the incumbent. And we'll see what happens. It's going to be interesting, but maybe we can do a follow-up after it's done.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting because so with this election, if one of them gets 51% of the votes, then that person is going to win. So there is no general election. But if no one reaches 50%, then the two that got more votes will go in a runoff in, when is that, November?
Yeah, probably November. Interesting. I did not know that. So that's interesting. Interesting stuff from my co-host. Actually, she's a co-host now. She can come on anytime she wants. Sara Alessandrini. Do check her out. This is what NewYorkersSay.com. And like I said, very talented filmmaker. You got to check that out. My name is Billy Dees. You can find me on social media, just Billy Dees. I don't get too fancy with it. The Billy Dees Podcast. Probably my social media home would be X, which is the former Twitter. And I've recently started the Substack thing, okay? Because I haven't been too thrilled with some of the other platforms. I'm not thrilled with any of them, but I got to say, I think Substack has some of the components that Twitter once had. And it's also got the blogging aspects that bloggers used to have. And it seems like right now there's a community of people on there that are interested in sharing content and doing constructive things. It's not all the trolls just saying, you're an asshole and all that. I mean, I get you get used to it after a while, but it's really not that productive. But Substack, I'm starting at scratch with it, but I kind of like it so far. And you have an article on there, right?
Yeah, I've written an article that is very detailed about Mamdani's, what he was proposing for during his program, during the campaign, and also counteracting that with the reality of how actually the system works, and also zooming out about what it means about us, that we keep looking for this type of politicians that like to propose a lot of things that are not achievable, and why do we still believe them?
Yes. Sara, I would hear again, do check her out on Substack. That's a very well written, very well researched article. You do such good work, Sara. It's always great to have you on.
Yeah, thank you for having me as always. And I will bring you more stuff related to another Substack I'm writing, actually. That I have to finish this article that is actually about the World Cup. But I haven't finished yet because I was in the middle of moving. So I have to finish it. And then because it's about the World Cup, but it's not about the World Cup. It's actually about the United States educational system and immigration system.
Oh, wow.
So it's a very complex connection for Italy that is not in the World Cup to the American system. So yeah, I'll finish that in the next weeks, and then maybe we can talk about it.
I want to check that out right now. So that's I'm really anxious to hear what you've done with that. That's absolutely fantastic. Once again, my name is Billy Dees, and you can find the Billy Dees Podcast on all the major podcast platforms. There's a lot of debate these days about what a podcast is. And for me, it's pretty simple. If you go to a podcast platform, one of the major ones, and the ones you recognize, I don't want to mention one because I'm on them all. But if you go to a podcast platform and you search out that name, it should come up. And if it doesn't, somebody might have a really good social media page. They might have a real good YouTube channel. But if it's not on a podcast platform, I don't know how you can call it a podcast. We've been on those for over 10 years. And actually, that's only in its current form. We've been doing podcasting longer than that. The Billy Dees Podcast. Very easy to find. Thank you so much for listening. And we will talk to you again very, very soon. I'm Billy Dees and host of the self-titled podcast, The Billy Dees Podcast. We are primarily an interview and a commentary-based podcast featuring authors and creators talking about their craft, advocates for community issues, and myself and an array of co-hosts discussing current events. There's no partisan ranting and raving going on here, just great content. You can find The Billy Dees Podcast on your favorite platform and on Twitter @Billy Dees. Thank you, and I hope you listen in.